Hi, and welcome to Nourishing Conversations. I'm Leah Williamson. I'm your host tonight. I'm from Brisbane Paleo, which is in Australia, Queensland, Australia, for those that are joining us from overseas tonight. And Nourishing Conversations are our online webinar program. So we love having conversations with people about real food, movement, and all things health. And tonight, joining me on the line, I've got Daryl Edwards. Hello, Daryl.
Hi, Leah. How are you?
Good, thanks. And also known as the Fitness Explorer. And tonight we're going to have a great chat about all things paleo, A to Z to paleo, and movement, or whatever anybody feels like having a chat about. Hopefully paleo related or health related, and Daryl's your man to answer the questions. So as you're coming into the chat room, if you can hear us, just give a little hi. I'm going to write hi in there so that we'll get the chat started. And as any questions come to you while we're talking, just put them up. We'll get to them as we go along. So hi, Astrid. Astrid's in the room. So, and Natalie. Hi, Natalie. Great. So while everybody's logging into the room, if you might experience a little bit of delay, that's usually just the nature of a webinar. If everything's slowing down and everybody's freezing, that type of thing, I would just suggest turning off all your apps like Facebook and things like that, because they can chew up a lot of bandwidth, and that can also slow your webinar program down. And yeah, and we're just going to have a really great conversation tonight. Oh, hi, Dan. Hi, Karen, Vanessa, Lani. Great. Everybody's logging in. Okay, so Daryl, I think we should start the webinar off with just a little bit about yourself. I find your story so amazing. I find it every time I hear it, just so hard to believe that once you were an extremely unfit person.
Yes. Yeah. So for those who don't know my backstory, the reason I encountered the paleo lifestyle was having an annual health check with my doctor. I used to work in investment banking as a technologist, and so every year I would have a really extensive health checkup. And on this occasion, I was told I had a whole battery of issues relating to being anemic, being hypertensive, high blood pressure. I was suffering from seborrheic dermatitis, which is a really horrendous skin condition. I also had lots of musculoskeletal problems, so low back pain, knee problems, ankle problems. I had elevated risk of cardiovascular disease. So there were a lot of concerns, especially for someone who felt as if I was generally in good health. And I remember my doctor telling me that I looked okay from the outside, but internally I was a bit of a mess. I was skinny fat, so I was a skinny fat individual. So I looked fairly lean, but I had no real muscle tone at all, and I was extremely unfit. You know, it's quite embarrassing to say, but I remember, I couldn't do anything that I could see other people doing in the gym. I struggled doing a couple of push-ups was kind of the limit for me, and I really felt that anything in the physical domain I just wasn't capable of. But that was fine, because I could always pay someone to do any physical labor for me if that's what I needed to do. That was my kind of mentality back then. My doctor told me the only way forward was to take a whole series of meds, prescription meds, to some statins, something to lower my blood pressure, some supplementation for my iron levels, and it was all around taking drugs for the rest of my life. And I asked him what I could do in terms of lifestyle, and he said, well, you're pretty much doing everything that we would recommend. You're not a big drinker, you don't smoke, you go to the gym every now and again. There's not much else you can do. You're eating low-fat produce, you're eating lots of whole grains, etc., etc., etc. So your food is great too. And I was like, that I'm not buying that. There has to be a way for me to change my lifestyle in order to be healthier. And so I read the book came across the book, The Paleo Diet by Lauren Cordain, and that was a game changer for me. And what appealed to me was the whole aspect of going back to basics and living a more straightforward lifestyle based around what our ancestors did. And so it wasn't just about the food that compelled me to this lifestyle. It was also thinking about what else I could do to get healthier. And within a short space of time, you know, within several months, my blood tests were all normalized. The doctors were telling me that it was actually getting to optimal ranges for some of those tests. I felt better. I was getting stronger. You know, I felt as if I was reaching my potential as a human being based on my health profile. And I wanted then to start sharing that good news with other people, which is why I do what I do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you really do share it in such a great way through your primal movement and through your books that you have out as well. So that it's not just that you have to come and see you in person. You can do your 12-week paleo program through your book. And you've just released another book as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your books?
Yeah, so Paleo Fitness, which was released a couple of years ago, is really talking about the aspects of paleo relating to movement. So if the paleo diet is a diet designed for how humans evolved or based on our ancestral eating patterns, Paleo Fitness is really looking at how we moved as human beings, how we moved in order to survive, how we moved in order to obtain the foods that we thrive on. And those movement patterns are lacking in a lot of conventional fitness programs. So we tend to focus on just doing some running and cardiovascular work, or we might do some heavy lifting in the gym, but there's far more to our movement practice than just one or two movements. And so Paleo Fitness explores that in some detail and has a 12-week movement program, starting from complete beginners right through to those who are more advanced with their movement practice. Paleo from A to Z, which is my new book. Actually, I probably should take the chance to point it out here. So this is my latest book, Paleo from A to Z, or Paleo from A to Z for those listening from the US. It's really exploring the entire lifestyle, paleo lifestyle, in an alphabetical format. So it was quite frustrating for me sometimes explaining the paleo lifestyle to people, and some people saying to me, this is all well and good, but you have to immerse yourself in all this research, and you've got to spend so much time reading and listening to podcasts just in order to sort your life out from a health point of view. And so this book was designed to make it a little bit more straightforward, almost a website in a book, you know, a really extensive FAQ for someone to say, right, what do I need to eat? What should I be avoiding? How should I manage my sleep and stress? And, you know, if I eat this food, will it give me the particular macronutrient or micronutrient that I need? You know, I find that it really is a useful guide for anyone living the paleo lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a really great reference book. I've got a copy myself on the Kindle version. And what I like about that is you're able to, you know, click on one link and then it takes you, and if there's another word in there, you can just go straight to the other word so that you can find out the definition of everything that you're talking about, and all connects to one another. So was it difficult putting it all together?
It definitely was. It started out as a fairly straightforward project, you know, maybe 50 or 60 topics to begin with. And then I kind of recognized that no matter how concise a definition was for a particular topic, that, you know, there are interrelated terms that you may or may not be aware of. So it then started to become a cross-reference and kind of hyperlinked guide. And it's now over 500 terms. And so if you read about insulin, you know, then you need to be aware of blood glucose. You need to be aware of glucagon, which is the kind of partner hormone. You may need to be referencing other hormones in relation to food, you know, around, say, ghrelin and lectin and so on, leptin and so on. So there are other areas that you may want to touch upon just looking at something like insulin. So it becomes, it became quite difficult to make sure all of that kind of hung together well, and that there were no kind of gaping holes based on a particular topic. So that became very interesting, and almost became a technical project rather than just, because it isn't just a narrative in this book. So it became quite technical to make sure all the links were working, and that it just kind of made sense from a book perspective.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we've probably covered it now, but Dan was asking what's the difference between this new book and your last book. So yeah. So One Liner, Paleo Fitness, is around the fitness based around a paleo lifestyle, and this book is exhaustive look at the paleo lifestyle. So managing sleep, stress, thinking about the products that you put on your skin, environmental toxins. I mean, it's impossible to list, but as I said, over 500 topics covered in some detail to give people an expose, really, of around this lifestyle. Yeah, and I think it's such a great reference book, so handy to have with you wherever you are, and because we're all out there talking about how much we love the paleo lifestyle, and then there's always someone that says, but what about something? And you're like, hang on, I'll just get out my A to Z of paleo and give you the definition, and here you can read more about it.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I think it's definitely useful for those who are starting out, but also those who have been living the lifestyle a while, who may have lots of questions, who want to spend less time necessarily Googling when they can go straight to a decent referenced answer. And for those who want to dig even deeper, there is an extensive reference and resources section in the back. So everything is evidence-based in this book, and you can feel free to do as much additional research as you can based on what I've listed in the back of the book as reference sources and citations.
And I really haven't seen anything else like it out there. It is very unique, and great guide for anyone.
Oh, thank you.
So just changing a little bit of tactic here. We've got another question from Dan. So if anyone's got any questions, throw them into the chat box, start asking away. We've got Daryl for another 45 minutes to ask any question about paleo, the lifestyle, movement, anything that you like. So just type it in the chat box and ask away. So Dan's asking, Daryl, what's your favorite meal to cook?
Favorite meal to cook? Right. To be honest, anything whenever I spend the time deciding on cooking for myself, that's my favorite meal. So I quite enjoy the process of sourcing ingredients, of trying to make a lot of the meals that my mother used to make when I was a kid. And so being of Caribbean heritage, coming from being of Jamaican parentage, I try and cook a lot of those meals. So quite exotic fruits and vegetables are utilized. I love something called breadfruit, which is a fantastic substitute, in my opinion, for whenever I'm missing bread. There's a fruit called the breadfruit, which has the consistency of almost like a warm bread, like freshly baked loaf of bread. And it's an absolutely wonderful taste. It's not something many people are familiar with, but it's something that I love a lot. And probably second would be plantain. So I absolutely love fried plantain, lots of coconut oil. That would probably be, a lot of the foods now that I'm starting to introduce again from a kind of cultural and ancestral point of view that my ancestors would have been eating. And probably my early morning, just throw everything together in the frying pan. So 6-7 eggs, some veggies, job done. So yeah, that probably the start of the day would be my favorite meal, because I know I'm preparing myself for the day ahead, and I can just kind of experiment with anything. Eggs plus anything else that's available tends to be my favorite meal.
And with all the movement that you do, does your breakfast with your 6 or 7 eggs get you right through to lunchtime, or do you have to stop and have a bit of a snack in between?
Yeah, I'm not one for snacking really. So yeah, if I do have 6 or 7 eggs, I'm good until probably mid afternoon. Sometimes that might carry me through right until the evening meal. Occasionally I do fast as well. So I tend to have a late breakfast or a lunch most days, but I tend to make a decision based on how I feel. So if last night I had a really extensive workout for a couple of hours, a client and I, and so this morning I was really hungry. I had dinner after the workout, but I was still really hungry this morning. So there's no way I would enforce a fast when my body's kind of crying out for food. But it took a while for me to really learn to listen to my body, to recognize a first signal rather than a hunger one, for example. But now I feel as if I'm pretty much on top of things when it comes to eating at the right sort of times. I'm a 2 meal a day man most days, 2 to 3 meals a day, and snacking very, very rarely.
Yeah. And if you ever have something like a treat, if you ever, what does that look like for you?
Well, when I was in Australia, last time I was in Australia, and I was going to paleo cafes in quite a few towns and cities there. One of my favorites was the Anzac, the kind of paleo Anzac biscuit. Absolutely phenomenal. So Paleo Cafe, you're doing a fantastic job there with that treat. But I don't bake goods myself, so it's not the sort of thing I would make for myself personally. So I try to ensure my treats are just real wholesome food, food as nature packaged it. So for me, having some fresh coconut water is a treat, or having some really in-season fruit is a treat for me. I had some wild Atlantic salmon a couple of nights ago. I mean, pretty pricey, but it was delicious. So again, that's a treat. I had to spend quite a bit of money to have something like that. So no, I try and make sure a paleo treat for me is the whole smorgasbord of food that are available to us, rather than just something that's a dessert, based on a dessert, or something that's really sweet and a delicacy. It's like, actually, no, everything we eat for health should also be recognized as a treat.
Yeah, true. So I've got another question here. It's kind of related, so I'll come back to some of the other ones. But Kat was just asking, hi, Daryl, what does the first hour of your day look like?
Well, I try, part of my philosophy is to have a play-based lifestyle, to kind of really enjoy what I do. And I've never been a morning person. So,
I'm not either.
Yeah, so I have to try really hard to get into, especially when you're working for yourself, it's really difficult to motivate yourself at the start of the day. And I don't do coffee. So it's really hard to get that real kind of buzz and push in the first thing in the morning. And so what I try and do now is straight away is try to get out of bed differently every single day. So I might roll out of bed, jump out of bed, crawl out of bed, and that would set me up, gets me a little bit out of breath. I definitely feel alive, and I have a bit of fun right at the beginning of the day.
So there's no wrong side of the bed for you there?
No wrong side of the bed for me, and if my partner's in bed, then then it's always interesting. Whatever happens, it's always really interesting, and I suppose for the rest of that hour, then I'm thinking about what my plan is for the rest of the day in terms of my work, and I'm also thinking about, am I going to prepare breakfast, or am I going to have a fast? What do I feel like today? And in terms of a beverage, I do tend to like a green tea with mint, with fresh mint or peppermint as a cocktail to start my day. So so there you go. There's my first hour jumping out of bed. That's great.
Have you tried the matcha tea? Matcha seems to be all the big rage at the moment.
It does tend to be the rage. Yeah, I have tried matcha in the past, and I do try and have as many varieties. I do like tea a lot, white tea or green tea. rather than black tea. But you know, the levels of caffeine are minimal in comparison to coffee, and the level of antioxidants, especially in white tea, are through the roof. So there are a lot of extensive benefits and studies around the benefits of green tea over and above the minimal caffeine content. You know, so it increases your metabolism. And there's lots of anti-aging properties, and very therapeutic as a beverage. So that tends to be my tea of choice first thing in the morning.
And I bet some of those words you just said then, antioxidant, metabolism, are they in your book?
They are in my book.
Get the book out. So I've got another question from Astrid. She's just asking if you have had any medical training since you have discovered paleo.
Yeah, so my paleo journey has been over a decade now, and probably a couple of years prior to that of me actually reading the paleo diet, or first coming across sort of evolutionary biology. And after a few years, and people are starting to ask me the question, like, what are you doing with your life? Because, you know, you look a lot better, you're getting healthier, you know, what are you doing? And I explained what I was doing, and everyone would just be kind of glazed over, or would ask my advice, and I didn't feel qualified to be able to give an answer and feel comfortable or responsible enough about doing so. So I studied nutrition, I studied clinical nutrition, I became a personal trainer, and I decided to quit my previous job in banking and focus and devote my life to this. So in terms of, you know, I haven't had medical training, but I have had clinical training in terms of clinical research and clinical nutrition. I have spent time working, you know, qualifying as a personal trainer and getting mentored by many the best in their field, and I continue to research up until this present day. I'm actually thinking of doing another master's degree. I'm not really sure in what area yet, to kind of further my education in that area. But I'm also very focused on not just being a bookworm or propeller head, because I want to relate to people, and I want to make sure, you know, everyone can benefit from this type of lifestyle. It isn't just for those who have an affinity for academia or, you know, hardcore research. You know, there's a place for that, but there's a place to actually make this, to simplify and refine this message, you know, so we can get members of our family on board, we can get our friends on board who don't want to hear biochemistry terms and, you know, gut flora, what the heck's that? Do you know what I mean? You know, there's a lot of stuff that repel people around this lifestyle and paleo, and it shouldn't really, because it is very simple. A 5-year-old should be able to understand why we do what we do. So yeah, so that's probably my drive at the moment, thinking about public awareness and the bigger picture around the paleo lifestyle.
Yeah, that's great, and it fits really well with Angela's question, who's just asked, what do you think is behind the drive to discredit paleo? When I tell my clients I'm paleo, the response from a lot of people is, oh, I hear it's dangerous.
Yeah, I've had that kind of criticism as well. I think anyone who stands up for paleo as a lifestyle, as a movement, is bound to get some criticism, whether that's from the obvious quarters, i.e. those who don't partake in animal protein at all, you know, vegetarians or vegans. So there's a conception that there's a lack of sustainability around meat produce, that meat is unhealthy, especially red meat, and that we're all carnivores, you know, eating kind of raw meat off the bone, is a kind of caricature of a lot of people who follow paleo from those outside of the paleo sphere. And also I feel that there are a lot of us who are very dogmatic about paleo, and whenever we're communicating with those who don't kind of understand or are outside of paleo, it's like whatever you have to say is a complete waste of time because it's not paleo. So I think that adds to a bit of the, you know, discredit of the paleo lifestyle. And also you've got conventional wisdom, and a lot of what we do doesn't follow the conventional wisdom model. So eating a low-fat diet, conventional wisdom still tells us that this is the way that we should be going. We should be reducing saturated fat. We should be reducing meat consumption. You know, we should be just focused on increasing vegetable and, you know, fruit and vegetable matter. You know, that those are the drivers for a lot of messages that we get from the media. You know, think about your cholesterol consumption. Think about, you know, think about that, because it's all unhealthy. And then you have us in the paleo world saying, yeah, I actually eat red meat and I love it. I eat organ meats and I love it. I'm actually reducing my carb intake because I've found health benefits. I'm not eating, you know, banana smoothies now with 40 different types of fruit in from my juicer every morning, because I recognize that isn't necessarily optimal for health. You know, there are a lot of things that we're saying now that goes against the grain, pun intended. That means we're going to get criticized. But my response tends to be, when I started this lifestyle, my response would always be, I'm going to show you some research. I'm going to point you to discrediting what you're representing. Now I just say to people, the evidence of my lifestyle is right here. The evidence of my lifestyle is based on the blood test that I get taken. And to be honest, if I went to my doctor in 6 months' time, in a year's time, and my doctor told me, unfortunately, Mr. Edwards, all the stuff we saw over a decade ago has come back, and it's obviously based on your lifestyle, I wouldn't hesitate to investigate and find out what I would need to do to reverse that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not into paleo because I just want to be passionate about this new fad diet that people describe it as. It's because it has given me a new lease of life. It has helped my clients enormously. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence. There is also some significant evidence, clinical-based evidence coming on board now for paleo. But to be honest, I feel great. I've never been healthier. I've never been stronger. I've never been fitter. So why would I give that up? And it's not my job necessarily to convince somebody who doesn't want to buy into this that what I do is better than their way of life. I just want to live my life, and then hopefully that's the testimony, you know, what I do and how I live. People can reflect on that and go, I just want to know more about what Daryl does. And if paleo is the way, then I might have to go paleo. But hopefully my lifestyle is what people see first. And then when they ask the questions with an open mind and open heart, they may decide to follow that path. So yeah, I know Pete Evans, for example, is getting a lot of heat over there in Australia. You know, Professor Tim Noakes in South Africa is getting absolutely slated for following his approach. And I know people like Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf get slated all the time, you know, for what they do. So it does happen. I've had emails, really hateful emails sent to me because I'm paleo, and I'm like, I don't really understand, why am I getting this heat? But we help far more people. People far more people benefit from this lifestyle than not. So that's enough of a driver for me to be passionate about it. And I want to get my immediate family on board, my friends on board, but also the wider population. Because if we don't do something now, when are we going to do something about this? We are really sick. Globally, we're really sick. I read recently that 99% of people globally suffer from one or more health affliction. You know, that's including the developing world. Yeah, I mean, it's horrendous. And over a certain age, I think it was 55 years old, people suffer from an average of 5 afflictions, 5 or more afflictions.
And I heard that 80 to 90% of illness is caused by stress as well. So
for sure, yes. I mean, it's all. I mean, that's the issue. We all know most diseases now are not based on infection. You know, they're not communicable diseases. They're based on, you know, lifestyle, you know, chronic lifestyle disease. It's based on what we eat, how we move, how we manage stress. It's based on a lack of sleep. It's a discord with you know, the discord between our ancestral past and our evolution with the modern era. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple for me. And that's the most important aspect of this message, not just eat more meat, eat more fat, everything's going to be fine. There's a lot more to paleo than that, for sure.
Yeah, you're dispelling those myths by leading by example. And I think that's the best way to go about it. Like you were saying, just show everybody how well this lifestyle works for you. Lead by that example.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and yeah, I think that's all you can do, because it improves your belief system in what you're doing. You know, it's like, hey, this is really working for me, and I want to share that. But, you know, you can't, I recognize that you can't convince someone. You know, it's like me being a far right politician and me having a meeting with, you know, the Socialist Worker Party and trying to convince them that my belief system is the right one. It's just not going to happen. You know, no matter what evidence I demonstrate or show, or, you know, it's just not going to happen. You're never going to see heart to heart based on that. And so, you know, hopefully my life will demonstrate that what I'm doing is the right way to go. You know, my ideology demonstrates that this path is the way to go, or not, as the case may be. And I think that's fair enough. Can't convince everyone.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, but you're doing a great job.
No, thank you.
So I've got another question from Natalie, and she's saying she's having a busy lifestyle. What exercise would you recommend? How long and how many days a week should I exercise for?
So Natalie, firstly, do you have this book, Paleo Fitness? Okay, so what exercise would you recommend? To be honest, it just depends on what your goals are, Natalie. It's very difficult to give for there to be one size fits all. If you do have my book, I would ask you just to go through the program. It assumes that you don't have much time, like most people don't have much time. Some of my exercise sessions are literally a few minutes a day. So I'm not the kind of person who's kind of caning it in the gym several hours a day in order to get fit. I'm looking for a minimal effective dose, actually, the least that I can do to get maximum benefit. And so a high intensity protocol would probably would work for most people. Not doing very much, but working out as hard as you can in a short period of time, and making sure you enjoy what you do so you can maintain motivation in the long term. Anything involving your body weight is a great place to be. Anything that involves resisting your body weight, i.e. pushing off the ground, so doing push-ups, doing burpees, anything like that is good. Once you feel really comfortable manipulating your body weight, then just add additional resistance. So get yourself a kettlebell, build yourself a sandbag, go outside and lift some rocks and push, push your car, pick up your kids. Integrate movement into your day is probably the best way to get, amazing value for money out of your, in terms of value for minutes, probably I should say. So, for example, I will never take, I won't use the lift, I'll take the stairs. I'll try on occasion to sprint and run for the bus, even if I don't need to, just so I can get a few more minutes of movement throughout my day. And in that way, I'm not kind of backing it all up for half an hour or an hour that I may never find the time for. So it becomes more of integration in my day rather than just a hobby that I put to one side after I've got everything important out of the way. So I hope that answers your question, Natalie. If not, just ping us another question.
And I think what's really good there is that whole mind shift from when you were just mentioning the word movement there rather than exercise.
Yes, no, I think, we don't have to exercise, but we have to move. It's impossible not to move, even though we're trying to make a good stab of doing that, avoiding movement. But most of us have to move. So when you are moving, take some opportunity to add a bit more intensity to your movement. By taking the stairs, by making sure you're not sitting down all day, taking regular movement breaks, creating movement snacks is also a great opportunity. Getting away from the computer and just doing 5 squats, getting back to your desk if you have that option. Stuff like that I think really works. And then by the end of the day, you've got yourself 20, 25, 30 minutes without exercising, just by integrating movement in your day. So I want to kind of stay in maintenance mode really for the rest of my life through using this approach, because I'm very busy as well, and I prioritize movement. I mean, this is what I love to do, but even I find it difficult sometimes to go, right, tomorrow I'm going to spend 40 minutes on a workout. I'd rather go to the park and play around, climb a tree, pick people up, piggyback them for a while. That's my kind of preference movement. But whatever that is for you that you enjoy is the way to get longevity out of this. And as long as you're following natural movement patterns, then you're less likely to be injured. You're more likely to get naturally strong rather than just gym fit.
Yeah, great. So now we're going to move on from movement. And Jessica's just asked, if you're a type 2 diabetic on insulin, do you think this lifestyle would work for you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so two reasons for that. From a conventional point of view, the recommendations for someone suffering diabetes would be, one, taking some sort of medication, so metformin or insulin. Exercise is also mentioned as a prescription, and usually a whole grain low fat diet is offered as a prescription. There have been studies comparing a low fat whole grain diabetic diet against a paleo diet. So a paleo diet based on the sort of original prescription, eating some meat and fish, eating healthy fats and some fruit and veg, and avoiding grains and dairy. And there's better success rate in managing insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance using the paleo type diet than a conventional diabetic diet. And the reason being is you have, one, less insulin spikes, secondly, and less insulin surges, and you're better able to manage your glucose, your blood glucose, because you tend to eat less carbohydrates than either a conventional standard American diet or Western pattern diet, and definitely less than somebody who's consuming a lot of whole grains and a very low fat diet. So your carbohydrate consumption comes down. It doesn't have to be a low carb diet, but your carbohydrate consumption comes down, and you're eating better food that gives you satisfaction for the longer term. So you don't have to be eating like a cow, grazing all day. You can just eat 1, 2, 3 meals to keep you going for the rest of the day. Secondly, exercise. This is really important when it comes to managing type 2 diabetes. So exercise is one of the most extensively proven methods to improve insulin sensitivity, even far more than diet, believe it or not, because it tends to work in the long term. Your body is basically primed to force nutrients into your muscles. So blood glucose is pushed into your muscles because your muscles are basically primed for movement. So insulin sensitivity, how your body responds to insulin, is improved through exercise. So the paleo lifestyle works extremely well for that. And then that's not even factoring in managing stress and managing sleep, which also there's a relationship between good quality sleep and stress management, and also dampening the insulin response.
Yeah, great. And Jessica, I don't know if you're in Australia or not, but we have a great speaker, Dr. Troy Stapleton, who manages his diabetes through exercise, and he does low carb, high fat, but very still with paleo principles there. So, and there's a lot of stories around and examples of people that are doing that as well. So, yeah, with great success.
Yes, for sure. It's a prescription that works. I have clients, former type 2 diabetics, pre-diabetics. I actually didn't mention, but I was pre-diabetic myself over a decade ago, which is very worrying. But now my blood sugars are fine, no issues at all. So it can reverse, not just prevent, but it can also reverse type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, that's great. So Astrid's got another question, and she's saying, what advice would you give to someone to help first adapt to a paleo diet?
So what was the question again? Sorry?
What advice would you give to someone to help first adapt to a paleo diet?
Okay. It depends on the individual. So if you loosely put people into two camps, you've got those who work best on a kind of big bang approach, kind of all or nothing. And you've got those who work better making smaller changes, incremental changes in the long term. That's how I'd roughly categorize people who are taking on the paleo diet for the first time. And having some sort of plan in place and goal setting in place helps you to decide which of those methods work for you. So I'd create a goal, how long, how long is this going to take for you to transition? When do you want to see, what sort of results you want to see, and how are those results measurable and proven to you? So whatever they may be. So if it's in terms of health, it might be, I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis. I tend to have outbreaks, every couple of weeks. So if I follow the paleo lifestyle for 60 days, 90 days, my expectation is that I have less regular outbreaks, or actually will be completely in remission, following this lifestyle. Start out with a goal, and then start out by saying, what do I need to do to achieve this goal? And how strict am I likely to be for the long haul? So most challenges that I see tend to be in the kind of 21, 28-day, 30-day category. And people tend to go through these challenges, have great success, and then they backslide to what they were doing previously. And then 6 months later, they go, okay, I'm going to do that challenge again to get back to optimal health. And then they just go back and forth and don't maintain any consistency. So I would say it's better for that individual to maybe operate at 80% compliance all of the time, it being something that they can manage. And that way they don't have to be stressed out about having to follow that really strict 100% regimen for 30 days and then go to a 60, 50% do whatever I want until I get sick again regimen. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So set a goal, find out what type of character you are in terms of, am I just all about willpower? I can do whatever I need to do for a given period of time. Or are you the sort of person that needs to make small changes gradually and wants to see, lots of successes in the short term that will keep you driving forward? I tend to be a big bang type of guy, kind of all or nothing. So when I did paleo, I went 100% strict. But I tell you one thing, I remember I always used to have a toasted sandwich every single day, on whole grain brown bread. And even though I went big bang, I was like, I still had to have once a week, one slice of bread in my toasted egg sandwich. So even for myself with strong willpower, I still kind of caved in. Of course, now I don't have any grains at all, but that still took me a few weeks to get rid of that one small piece of bread, because I was like, I can't just give everything up. But it was worthwhile for me because of the health benefits. So there was no point me cheating regularly. So I had to go all or nothing.
Yeah, that's great. So I've got Astrid's got another question, and she's asking again what your thoughts are on alcohol.
Yeah, I'm going to sound very puritanical about this. I don't drink, but I used to be a big drinker, especially a binge drinker. As you know, the Brits have a reputation around the world for loving their alcohol, especially on a Friday and Saturday night. And kind of getting smashed is a rite of passage for most adults. So alcohol I no longer consume. I know there is some evidence around the occasional glass of red daily. It can offer some health benefits, but I feel for most people they would benefit far more by not consuming alcohol at all. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. One is, if you're avoiding sugar because you're concerned about the impact on your insulin and the impact on your health, then alcohol is a far worse toxin. Has no nutritional benefits whatsoever in any way, shape or form. It's identified as a toxin immediately by the body. Sugar is at least still identified as a food source, as a carbohydrate, but alcohol is identified as a toxin that the liver has to break down. Most of us are already overwhelmed by toxins in our environment, whether from car fumes, toxins in our home. So we don't want to add any additional burden to our liver unnecessarily. And secondly, from a health point of view, it affects your sleep overnight. So even though it's a sedative, a mild sedative, and you tend to doze off a lot better once you've had a drink, you only it's only framed within very light phases of sleep. So the deep sleep and the REM sleep, which is all restorative, you have very little of that overnight. It also suppresses testosterone and growth hormone overnight. So again, all of the hormones that are responsible for reducing body fat and improving our metabolism and helping the body grow and repair itself, we're kiboshing that process by drinking alcohol. So yeah, I could go on about alcohol all night. I do mention alcohol in some detail in my book with a lots of extensive reference. I would say if you have to drink, you know, because you just have to, then just moderate your intake and drink very occasionally. If you can quit, I would say it's probably one of the best things you can do, for sure.
And we all know alcohol leads to poor choices. And I'm not just talking about things you do, but poor choices in food as well, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely want to, you're more likely to want to have that, you know, favorite food from your previous life, your non-paleo life will kind of creep in. But yeah, I'm not a monk. I don't want to portray that I am, and I'm definitely not perfect, but there are a lot of health benefits that come from alcohol. And I know, I mean, I had a great time in my 20s and a lot of my 30s consuming a lot of alcohol, no doubt about it. But I'm also aware there was extensive damage done during that time, especially because I was binge drinking. And, you know, that one glass of wine, if you actually look at the amount of alcohol that you should be having as one glass of wine, people don't have that. They have like 2 or 3 glasses of wine in one glass. And then they have another glass of that size. And then before you know it, you've had half a bottle, 3/4 of a bottle. And people do that regularly because it helps them de-stress and it helps them get to sleep. And it becomes, you know, an unnecessary toxic burden. So, yeah.
And I think I don't know if you've seen Dr. Libby, she's Australian, and she talks about, you know, you warm up on coffee and you start the day, you know, warming up on coffee, and you cool down with alcohol, and you just get into that pattern and you rely on those, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those kind of crutches to get through your day, which isn't ideal. You know, we should be very alert in the morning because of our cortisol response, you know, and we should be, you know, as soon as the sun goes down, we should start feeling naturally sleepy and tired and ready for sleep. But, you know, we play far too much with technology in the evening. Now it's okay, guys. But but yeah, you know, we play far too much with technology in the evening, and we drink alcohol, and we stay up far too later than we should, and then we wonder why we can't get really good restful sleep, and it's because we're avoiding nature's prescription for our 24-hour day. You know, our circadian rhythms are screwed up, unfortunately, in many cases.
Yeah, that's right. Which is a whole topic we could talk about as well, but we've still got about another 5 or so questions and about 10 minutes to answer them. So I'll move on to the next one from Lani. And she says, conventional wisdom recommends that if you have high cholesterol, you need to cut down on fat. Based on your research, what would your recommendations be to reduce your cholesterol whilst following paleo?
Okay, all right. So, right. If you have, okay, let's talk about conventional wisdom. So conventional wisdom tells us that cholesterol is bad, pretty much in any way, shape, or form, and high cholesterol is really dangerous because it increases the risk of cardiovascular disease or heart disease. So there's overwhelming evidence that there isn't a link between dietary cholesterol intake and blood serum cholesterol. So that's the first point. So eating lots of eggs isn't necessarily going to increase your total cholesterol levels. That's one. Secondly, there is no evidence that high levels of cholesterol are linked to increased rates of cardiovascular disease. So those links have been refuted based on poor data and kind of mocked up data of many decades ago. So overwhelmingly, the messages are being turned around, even from a conventional wisdom sense. The messages are being presented in the sense that saturated fat is no longer the enemy, as it was deemed to be previously, and cholesterol in itself is not necessarily the problem. The problem is levels of inflammation is the real риsk when it comes to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Elevated triglycerides are pointed as being a risk factor. things like homocysteine, which is another inflammation marker, and CRP for inflammation. Those are the markers that you need to be paying close attention to. You can get detailed cholesterol markers done and lipid profile tests done to look at your cholesterol in more detail to see if it is an issue for you or not. But I would just say, if you have very high cholesterol, you don't necessarily have to have any dietary interventions at all to manage that. I would see a professional to make sure that that reading for you isn't problematic. If you have high cholesterol in combination with high levels of inflammation, high levels of elevated triglycerides, that's going to be a problem. So if you read a statement saying, don't worry about high cholesterol, that's not going to be relevant for that individual. For that individual, it definitely is an issue, but not just because of the cholesterol. It's actually the context of the other health markers that are problematic. So yes, so again, don't want to kind of keep on pointing to the book, but the book covers cholesterol in lots of detail. It covers a lot of the other health markers. It covers a lot of the history around the evidence pointing to why cholesterol was identified as a problem back in the 80s. So 84, Time magazine had extensive evidence back then as to why cholesterol was a problem. Don't eat eggs anymore, avoid butter. Now it's flipped on its head, telling us now, eat butter. Don't worry about the amount of eggs you consume. Even the UK now, the NHS now say, don't worry about the amount of eggs you consume on a daily basis because there's no dangers from that in relation to cholesterol. The US have now, the American Heart Association posted recently with the same message. So, that's becoming conventional wisdom, and I'm sure in a few years we'll no longer see those sort of messages coming out from conventional wisdom quarters. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very extensive topic, Lani, but I hope that gives you a little bit of comfort in that. And as I would say, it's always important, if you are really concerned, just get some tests done, some blood tests done, see a specialist, just to make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah, and in relation to that, there's another question from Kat, which is saying, are there any specific tests for health markers that you would recommend asking for from your GP?
Okay, so I mean, this depends where you are really in the world. In the UK, it depends how much money you want to spend. So let's assume you don't have to pay for your healthcare. I would go to my GP and I would definitely get my blood pressure done to make sure I'm not hypertensive. It's the single biggest risk factor for premature death, blood pressure. People tend to ignore it, but it's extremely dangerous. I would definitely get my blood glucose tested, so fasting glucose tested. I would get hemoglobin A1C. That's a 3-month average of your blood glucose, which is far more accurate as a diagnostic tool for any issues with your blood glucose or being pre-diabetic. So hemoglobin A1C, I would ask for. I would get a micronutrient profile. So sometimes you might need to ask for a bone profile for your doctor. Very easy to ask for, especially if you're female, because you may be at risk of osteopenia or osteoporosis. And that will give you a really good detailed blood panel on, your magnesium levels, phosphorus, calcium, and so on. Definitely ask for vitamin D, wherever you are in the world. Here in the UK, we obviously have a problem not having enough sun. So a lot of people are vitamin D deficient here. But even in Australia, because of the slip, slap, slop, most people are covered up with sunscreen all day and not necessarily getting in, or working indoors all day, not necessarily getting enough vitamin D. So I'd ask for that. A lipid profile. So total cholesterol, HDL, LDL, get the ratios done. Triglycerides can also be looked at in that. Most of those tests I've just mentioned would either be free of charge or very inexpensive. And they probably cover
in Australia,
most of the
I'm pretty sure that's just part of a full blood panel, and there'll just probably be a little extra that you can ask for there, but that's pretty much on the full. If you just go in and say, I need a full blood panel, that's what they'll probably give you most of those anyway.
Yeah, which is great. So yeah, if you ask for those, the inflammation marker, so the CRP, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So C-reactive protein, which is one of the best methods to detect inflammation, which is the cause of most modern lifestyle diseases, or deemed to be the cause. I'd get tested for CRP as well. If you can get high sensitivity CRP, even better. but you tend to have to pay for that. And then of course you've got all of the other panels. You can get the thyroid panels, you know, and so on. But I would tend to start off, even with my clients, I would start off with very simple, straightforward, fairly high level, based on those that I've just presented. And then if there are any issues, we can then delve deeper, and there may be extra costs associated with that. In my book, again, Paleo from A to Z, I actually cover most of those health markers in the book, with international as well as American measurements, but also the ranges from a conventional point of view, but also from an ancestral point of view, because sometimes they're different. So your doctor may tell you, oh, your CRP is fine, but from an ancestral point of view, you may want to have a much better result from your blood tests. So yeah, just get the book, Kat, as a good place to start, and for you to understand what some of those results mean.
Yeah, that's great. And if anyone hasn't noticed already, there's a little link up on the top of the screen there, which gives you the link straight to the book, so you can find out more information about it. And if you were madly trying to write everything down as Daryl was saying it, you get the replay of this webinar after, so you can go back and rewatch everything and write those down if you need to. But yeah, the link to the book is being displayed for everybody there. So I think we'll just take one more question, because we're just about right on time. I have a comment which was from Angela. She's just saying she's a certified nutritionist and was very jaded by what she was taught at uni. We were taught this conventional wisdom, very cookie cutter.
Yeah. So I was taught conventional wisdom as well when I did my nutritional qualifications. But to be honest, there's some benefit in that, because you want to be aware of why conventional wisdom has that particular stance. And to be honest, they would say it's because of extensive research. So you have to understand a lot of that research in the context of the paleo and evolutionary medicine, for you to have an open opinion and not necessarily a biased one. So, there's a lot of paleo research, unfortunately, that is very weak and wouldn't stand up in the court of research, if you understand what I mean. So, it's not enough sometimes to say, oh, well, I'm just better by following paleo and that's all that matters. Scientists and nutritionists sometimes want extensive evidence. And, even in me doing research for my book, there isn't much out there in certain quarters. So it's very difficult to kind of nail research around some of the stuff we do, because it's so bleeding edge. It's right on the forefront of what's the best that's out there. But there are also lots of claims being made by people that don't have any qualifications, or are just basing it purely on anecdotal evidence. And it's like, really? I saw a device actually recently for curing jet lag by wearing a device with light, basically like earphones emitting white light down you, and supposedly white light entering the brain is supposed to reset your circadian rhythms. And I'm like, really, where's the evidence for that? And what part of the brain is supposed to be picking up that light signal? We respond to light basically from the light coming through the eye, from the retina. That's how melatonin is produced. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, there's lots of bogus claims that sound great on the surface, but no scientific evidence. And it's good to weigh up conventional wisdom with what we know based on evidence at times as well. So yeah, it is frustrating at times, but it's worth fighting the good fight.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, I said one question, but we'll take two because there's two left. Okay. So this one should be fairly quick. So Natalie just said that earlier. You said you had two main meals, I think that is. When do you have your two meals? What time? I guess that's what time do you have your two main meals?
Yeah, so if I'm fasting, if it's a fasting day, which, as I say, I don't follow an intermittent fasting protocol, but sometimes I just don't feel like eating in the morning. So I might have breakfast at midday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I have my second meal maybe at 8 o'clock at night, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. That would be it for 2 days. If I'm having a three meal a day, it might be 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning for breakfast, 1 o'clock for lunch, 2 o'clock for lunch, and then same sort of time in the evening, 6, 7 in the evening for dinner.
Yeah, great. And so I think this is a good one to kind of finish up on. From Astrid again, I think she's probably asked about 10 questions, which is fantastic. How do you maintain motivation to stay on the paleo diet?
Oh, for me, it was relatively easy because it was a health focus as to why I wanted to do paleo. It wasn't vanity. Really, because I was, as I said, I was skinny fat. I used to wear pretty good suit, decent suits to work. No one could tell I had any issues with being overweight. And when I was confronted with facing my mortality before my time, it was like, Darryl, you're elevated risk of heart disease, and you could be one of the guys that keel over in your 40s with a heart attack. What? I need to do something about this. So it's very easy for me to maintain motivation to do this. And unfortunately, I've had family members, my mother had a heart attack before she was 60. My brother had a heart attack at 41, my younger brother. So, I have those close to me who suffered a lot for ill health. So I know that I don't have much of a genetic advantage. I have to really work hard at being healthy because, I wasn't blessed with the best. Unfortunately, but the great thing is I can do the best that I can through lifestyle choices, and that is far more effective than what I was born with in terms of my genetic profile. So that's how I maintain my motivation. And I would say for anyone, if your motivation is based on health, you're more likely to want to see this through for the long haul and make your paleo diet a lifestyle one rather than a 30-day. I've lost a couple of kilos, I've lost a pound, I've lost dropped a dress size, all well and good, but it's not something that you want to be focusing on long term. People can drop a dress size by doing almost anything. Cabbage soup diet, you'll drop a dress size, not going to make you healthier. Calorie restriction, you will drop a dress size, isn't necessarily going to make you healthier. You're probably going to put far more weight back on after you finish with that short-term intervention. So health provides motivation.
And I would say there to surround yourself with like-minded people. So like the Brisbane Paleo group, getting together and surrounding yourself with those people, keeping you motivated, and knowing that you've got that big family there to help you to get through it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point, Leah. I think that's a really good point. Community is really important, especially if you're immediate, maybe your immediate family aren't keen on you doing paleo, or it's a real struggle. So reaching out to those who share similar values to you is obviously beneficial. So yeah, great answer, Leah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we might leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this nourishing conversation. And we're going to check out your book. It's Paleo from A to Z. And the link's put up there for everybody to find. And yeah, thanks so much for answering all these amazing questions with your very great wisdom there.
Thank you very much, Leah, and thanks to everyone for attending the webinar. Some really interesting questions and some challenging questions as well, so which was great. So thank you very much. If you want to find out more about me or what I do, please check out paleofromatz.com. and also my website, where I blog at the fitnessexplorer.com, and sign up to the mailing list so you can find out more about what I do.
And one last thing before you go, when are you coming back to Australia?
I'm hoping to be there in October.
Oh, really?
Yes, this October. So so there'll be probably some announcements in the near future. But yes, I'm going to be. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be there in October. It's not a maybe. So it's a definite. It's just pinning down when that's going to be. So probably early to mid October is the time frame currently.
Well,
so
you and I will have a talk after and get you to Brisbane.
For sure. No, I look forward to come back. Brisbane is always a favourite place to be of mine. So no, definitely, I'll be back.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, and good night, everybody.